The comments made and opinions given by show hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the All One Broadcast or its sponsors.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to invite you all to join me, Cathy C., host of Crystal Visions, as I unlock the mysteries and the unexplainable among us, and those that are just beyond our reach. Hey, everybody. How is all my peeps out there today? I hope everybody's doing well. We had a really nice weekend here on the East Coast. Warmed up nicely, had a couple of few sunny days. Was able to enjoy the weather with the snow on the ground because it hasn't gone anywhere yet. A lot of it's disappearing, but it's still here. Fun stuff. You have to love winter. Although, let me say this, happy Groundhog Day, everybody. We all know that Porksatawny Phil from Pennsylvania and Staten Island Chuck both did not see their shadows, so they're saying early spring. I'm sure you will enjoy hearing that. Although for me, I like the winter. But that's another show and another story. So look forward to it. Early spring. La 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 la. Let me welcome you all here and thank you all for joining me this hour. I appreciate that you take the time out to spend this time with me. It really is a lot of fun, and I really do appreciate it. And especially those of you that are in the chat room that show up week after week. You guys rock the show. You ask such outrageous questions, and you're on the ball. I don't know what I would do without you. And for those of you that are out there listening in internet land, that are out on iTunes or TuneIn, you know, you can feel free to come on over to the chat room and hang out with us. All you have to do is go to allonebroadcast.com. That's ALL, the number one, broadcast.com. At the top of the page, you'll see the word chat. You click on that, and voila, there you are. You'll be in the chat room. You can ask me or my guest questions. We're not averse to that. You know, you private chat me, and we take your questions, and they get answered. And every week, we try to have a very interesting guest, and tonight is one of them. And, this young lady, and I say young lady because she's a very nice young lady, and she is an author. And well, let me tell you her name. Her name is Courtney Amundson. I hope I said that right, or Amundson. I'm sorry, Courtney, if I screwed that up, but I don't like to do that. But she, you know, this book that she wrote is I can't fully explain the work or the understanding or the comprehension that you need to have. Not that it's hard to understand, but it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of soul digging. The title of her book is Greetings, Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within. Now, that's just the title of the book. The book goes on to really, we'll discuss it as we go. But Courtney began her path as a seeker at a young age, and progressing to the point that the teachings began to flow through her effortlessly and with complete love and joy. Starting at age 60, she was very young. In the beginning, the wisdom was received from her own evolution and understanding, but after a short time, she was guided to share it with many people as possible. Throughout teachings from God, since then, she has worked single-mindedly on getting these teachings out to the public. And I could see why, because you really want to know about this book. It is really something rare. And not only through the work of the book, but expanding into sharing her insights through publishing articles and speaking. So you know what? Without further ado, let's bring her on because, like I said, I don't like to keep my guests waiting too long. They'll have a tendency to run away if I go on and on and on. So, Courtney, welcome to Crystal Visions.
Thank you so much, and for that lovely introduction. I'm really happy to be here, and you didn't butcher my name too bad, you know. So
Okay.
don't worry about
what
it.
is the correct pronunciation?
So it's Amundson.
Amundson. Okay.
Yes. And don't worry, because everyone does it.
It's not something you like to do.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so this book started to flow through me at the age of 16, as Cathy said. And I really didn't anticipate to be an author. I really did not have that in my life plan. From a young age, I always wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a professional violinist. And I studied very, very hard up until the end of my high school years. And I studied hard, and I wanted to go to Juilliard, and I wanted to just dive into that whole world. And I realized when I got a little bit more advanced and I got closer to really getting to that point in which I could audition, I realized that it didn't feel right to me. I loved music and I loved everything about it, but it wasn't fulfilling my soul in the way that I knew music should, or I knew something should. And I've always had that instinct, that pull to do what really feels like it's going to fulfill me, mind, body, and soul, and not for any external reasons, not for money, not for fame, not for a identity that would make me fit in. You know, I wanted something that I could really connect with and have a purpose with and do something for the world and not just for myself.
That's an amazing thing to do at a young age like that.
Yeah,
to have that thought and, that foresight to see that.
And I think that was just innate within me. It wasn't like a moment when I thought, okay, I should probably focus on this. It was kind of always just there. And I became interested in spiritual things from a young age, and it was always kind of in my realm of understanding because my mom especially was into a lot of that stuff, and she listened to a lot of different spiritual teachers, and she read The Secret, and she exposed me to that movie, and as well as the work of Neil Donald Walsh and his whole story in his book, Conversations with God. So I was introduced to that when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And I remember sitting there and watching The Secret, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this totally opens up my world. To know that there's this secret out there. There's a secret of the law of attraction, and that there's a divine synchronicity to everything, and that we are creating our reality. And this was just a very, just a big turning point for me in realizing that there's something magical in my world that is not being taught to me in school. It's not being talked about. And yet it's the foundation of our existence. And so that propelled me to really dive deeper and start seeking more and more and more. And I remember playing games with my family, see what we could manifest, see what we could visualize. And just as an example, it kind of explains the lightheartedness to my journey, and it's not always been serious and deep and all of that. A lot of it's been really fun and exciting. And so all of this is priming to the main point. which is how this work actually started coming through me. And it really started, and I remember this date specifically, it was March 12th, 2012.
Wow, you remember the specific date?
Yes, because it was so big for me. It was so big, I couldn't not remember it.
Would you like to share that experience? Or?
Absolutely, yeah, I would love to. So I was going to online school at the time, and most of the reason for this was simply because my learning style was different and I wanted more flexibility for my music studies. But this also gave me a lot of time to dive into my spiritual life and to meditate and to do yoga and to just explore these things. So I was taking a meditation break during the day, and I remember listening to some teachings by Esther Hicks, and I remember doing a lot of research on past life regression and children's past lives. And this was throughout that week, but especially on this day, I remember just being just vividly, just very involved and just researching like crazy and trying to get to the bottom of all of this. And so I was taking this meditation break, and I just felt like I needed to center myself, and what happened when I sat down on the couch is I felt something very different come over me, something that I hadn't experienced in other meditations before, and this kind of got me intrigued right away because I'd been meditating for a very long time, so this was interesting me what was happening.
You have to excuse me because I am floored, but because you were accomplishing all of this at such a young age. Most kids at that age don't even give this stuff a thought unless they're experiencing some things. You know?
That's true, and I think also a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was given the opportunity to dive into my own self. I was given the opportunity to explore, and nothing was shut down. You know, I think everybody has this gift, but if you shut it down or if others shut it down, then it can be hard to find those things within yourself and find the wisdom.
Right. So I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's okay. So what happened when I sat down on the couch is I felt this amazing light-filled presence come into my body. And I felt it like a golden liquid light. And it started coming from above my head, and it went down into the top of my head, and it started trickling down my body. And it was such a blissful, peaceful experience. I remember just being almost like paralyzed in that moment where when this presence hit me, I couldn't move. I was just in this amazing space, and I was feeling just transcendent. I was feeling like I was floating above the chair. No weight, no anything. And it was unconditional love. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what this was. And I remembered, and I was trying not to analyze it in the moment. I just wanted to experience it. But the mind's there, of course, always. And it was saying to me, my mind was saying, remember, this is what happened to Esther Hicks when she started speaking with Abraham.
Wow.
And so I was recalling her story during my experience, and this amazing. It was like there was a voice but no words. It was like there needed to be some vocalization, and I didn't know how to get it out. There was a message that was for me, and so as I tuned into that deeper, I could feel that golden liquid light coming down into my hands.
Wow.
And as it moved into my hands started to move. They started to kind of twitch. And there was such power and such energy in that. And I thought, okay, they want to type. They want to write something to me. So I went to the computer and I put my hands down and I opened up a blank Word document and they started to type. And at first it took a little bit on my part to get used to this. And I had to surrender. Yeah. And I had to really just be present in that moment. And it actually came out in some weird ancient language at first. And the weird thing was it didn't make sense on the page, but I was getting the whole story in my head.
Yeah. Trust.
Right. So then I said to them in my mind, I said, I only speak English. You're gonna have to translate that for me. And within that hour of me just sitting there being very patient, it started to translate into choppy English, and over time it got much smoother, but the presence was so joyful and humorous. You wouldn't believe how humorous it was, because what you see in the book is very deep concepts and very loving and compassionate energy. And in the beginning, it was very humorous and it was very playful, and it got me to this place of such connectedness in my life and such joy. And, I really saw everything in a lighthearted manner.
Wow.
I really did not worry about anything. And this presence truly guided me 100% every single day. And I would ask it, what should I eat today? What should I do today? Should I paint today? And they would paint pictures for me, and they would tell me stories, and they would put me up to tasks to really learn how to surrender and to trust and to be even more grounded into myself and to connect to my divine power. And I remember one day, my test was to walk around a pond with my eyes closed.
Wow.
And this test was to help me to truly surrender and to trust in this higher power that was guiding me. And I knew that if I was able to do that I would be able to really push through anything.
Yeah, I have that absolute trust. That's amazing.
It was hard. It was really hard.
I know. That's the one problem that I had, was giving up and just letting go and accepting it and trusting it, just knowing it. Just go with that flow.
Right. And it's hard too. I mean, right now even I come up against obstacles and I have a hard time trusting. And it's new levels of expansion and new levels of growth every time. So it might have started with that little exercise, but as you grow, it gets it gets a little bit harder.
A little deeper, right?
A little deeper.
One of my listeners said that maybe they came across that way so as not to scare you, since you were so young when this started happening.
Yeah. I think that in many ways, and I think you got it right. This presence showed up in a way that I could receive it.
Right.
And it showed up in a way that I could understand. And I didn't understand oneness at that point. I didn't understand these universal concepts to the extent that I do now. So it showed up in a way to really help me go deeper. And it was this very loving guide kind of presence. But I knew that it was bigger than just a singular being. It was not that. It was something bigger. And you will see this in the book. It's not I, it's we.
Right.
For us. And it's always in the plural. And what I came to realize is that God is not singular. And nothing about God is singular. It's source energy. And what is source energy? It's all that is. And when I got to a more pure place of understanding that, that's when the teachings got deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's when the real truth started coming out, because I was getting to a place of more releasing my mind or my ego, whatever you want to call it, that was getting in the way of the truth really coming through.
Right.
And I want to say, along with that point, and I think this is very essential for people that are listening, is that, I think the reason why the teachings have been so pure and the wisdom has been so pure is that I was not grown up into one way of thinking, and I was never put in a box to where it would be hard to accept what was coming through.
Right. Well, it was good that you had your mom that was into that. So there was that, that familiarity with it. So it wasn't so strange because it was something already inside you.
Right.
And it resonated for you to open up and have them come in that way. So.
Right. Yeah, my whole family has been, I think we all have our gifts, but we are on the same page with all of this, and we resonate on that same level. So it's always been, the type of thing where we can talk about it and we can converse about it. So,
how many people have that in their families,
Yeah, I feel really lucky to have that. I really do, because I would
never. That's a
never.
great advantage. It's a gift. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And I believe we choose our families too, and I believe that we have these soul contracts and we know who we want to meet up with, and we have these agreements between each other, and it's all for our soul growth, and not just us personally, but everyone involved. So I think it's also important, if you feel less fortunate to, in your family or whatever it is, have compassion and see if you can't find the lesson in that, and see if you can't find a way to rise above that.
Right. See, that we're always talking to the people that are going through it like you went through it, and people that are going through that, and telling them to go out there and do it. And, there's nothing wrong with it, even though their families will not, some won't accept it, won't acknowledge it. They tell you you're crazy, but if those people that are out there and they're listening learn how to open up to this, okay,
right,
and accept it, and it's an alternative. It takes, I think, because it involves religion. I don't want to say religion, but spiritual teaching. Most people think it might be a cult, something that's taking over your mind. Yeah, I think they get afraid when they're not familiar with the kind of work that it is.
Oh yes, definitely. And I've actually been, I've had a lot of experience in that field. Friends, family, who maybe don't really understand it. And what I've always said is, and what I try to teach and what I try to be, is I want to be free to speak my truth. I want to free myself to speak my truth and be able to do that without, feeling like I'm disappointing other people. Right. But also I want to treat other people that way. I want others to speak their truth. And, I think it's important to be able to still find common ground and to still love each other and to still appreciate each other. And
very well said, exactly.
And open your mind too, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. That's the hard part, I think, for people to do.
It is.
And you can't see it, and it's not there. It doesn't exist.
Right. But at the same time, how in the world did all of this come to me then? Exactly. Because I didn't know any of this. I wasn't taught any of this. Right. And boom, there it is. And some people might argue, well, you've been introduced to, some of these teachers that teach these concepts, but there are many new concepts in my book, and there's many many of these concepts that go into greater detail. So, what I would say is, for anybody that's a little bit skeptical of, is this really real or not? What I tell people is, I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, but I think what really tells the truth is how people feel when they read it, how people feel when they connect with that presence themselves. And you can't speak about that. You can't explain that to another person. It's something that they feel. Yeah, right. It's between you and your divine essence or your God or
your soul. Right.
Your soul. Whatever word you have for it, it really doesn't matter. Right. It's the connection.
Exactly. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Very well said. I got a question from the chat room from Karen. She wants to know if you are psychic too.
Yeah, I wonder what you mean by psychic, because I think a lot of people have different labels on all of these things, and for me, I've never identified with that term. But what I would say is, I'm in tune with a lot, and I'm in tune with the more subtle realms. Do I try to read people's minds? No. Do I try to,
you don't
be
want to
woo-woo?
Go there.
No, I don't. You know what I want to be? I just want to be somebody that helps serve the planet and use my gifts to help people to awaken to their highest power and their divine power. But I really now, and a little bit of experience with this too, I really now try to back away from anything that puts me in a box or puts me on a label, because sometimes it's used as a platform to help you feel better about yourself, like, ooh, I'm psychic, or ooh, I'm empathic, or ooh, I'm better than you, essentially. And not everyone is like this, so I don't want to make a generalization, but I think a lot of people get in this ultra spiritual box where, it becomes they become very attached to that label, and then we're more distant from each other. And I think it's the same as how we distance each other in religion. I think it really is the same. So for me, I just like to be myself. And myself, I have many different qualities. And I am an aware being. But I don't want to say, I'm an indigo child, or you know what I mean?
Right.
I back away from that now, because I've realized that doesn't serve me. It doesn't help me make more connections with people, because they perceive me as someone that is egotistical or somebody that knows more. And I don't want people to bow down to me, and I don't want people to treat me differently. So that's my, I don't know if I fully answered that question. I've never identified myself as a quote-unquote psychic, but I'm sure I have some of those qualities.
Well, I would imagine so, especially with the meditation that you do.
Yeah.
But you're not, I believe everyone has that ability. For lack of a better word, I use the word psychic, because you can go by a hunch that you have and you feel something and you just know it. You go with that gut instinct.
Right.
That's a sixth sense. That's, you feel.
Right. And when you are tapped into that universal source energy, all of those things get heightened. All of those senses get heightened. So when I am in that space, and for example, doing a reading for someone, whether it's in a group setting or in a private setting, those things open up, and I am able to get information that I would not ever get if it was just me. So, you can call it really whatever you want.
Right.
But that is, I guess,
for lack of a better word, right?
Yes, right.
We'll use psychic.
Yeah.
But that's how I feel. And like you said, everybody has it to a different degree, and how you how you're willing to work with it, is
Yes, exactly.
what you'll use and how you'll use it. But the book, Teachings from God. Now, when you were getting these, when you were doing these meditations and you were getting these spirits around you, did you know? Do you know now who they are or what they were, or was?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that's very important for listeners to get to right off the bat. What I've really come to understand, and in the beginning, this was a very big learning process for me, but I didn't fully understand what it meant to connect in the way that I was connecting. I didn't fully understand who or what it was. And like I said, I knew it was plural because what they were talking to me about, they were always saying we, and it was never I. So I always thought, well, who is we? And I would ask questions and sometimes get clear answers and sometimes get kind of blurry answers, and it led me to really get stuck on that point. Every time I would sit down and connect with this energy, I kept thinking, who is this? And I was getting a little bit frustrated, or maybe not frustrated, but just stuck on that point. And then I realized I'm really pushing at this, and I'm really trying too hard. And I just let go. And I said, okay, whatever you need to tell me, I'm just going to let it happen. And that's when the magic started to happen the whole thing was magical, but that's when it really started to open up. And I realized, okay, it's bigger than I'm letting myself realize. My mind is telling me this presence has to be put in a physical form for me to understand. And so I called this presence Hannah in the beginning, and the reason why I did is because when I was a kid, my mom would, when she would tuck me and my sister in for bed, she would have us visualize our guardian angel Hannah surrounding our house and protecting us.
Wow.
And so this angel presence was kind of always my guide for a long time, and I always visualized her. And so when this presence started really coming through, I thought, this is Hannah, this is who this is, and I attached that label to it. But as I grew and as I started to understand more, I realized maybe that's not the right way to understand it or to label it, because it's so much bigger. And then I was given a metaphor for what this presence really was. And it said, we are oneness, we are source energy, we are God essence, and went on to explain really what God is. And God is all. And the metaphor was a pot of soup, and that we are all part of this pot of soup. But within this pot of soup, there are many different flavors and textures. And when we taste the soup, we're able to pick out those different flavors. We can taste the thyme, we can taste the salt, we can taste the carrots, we can taste all of these different things as individuals. But as a collective, it's just one pot of soup, and we wouldn't measure the molecules of water in that soup. It becomes one substance. So that is like what source energy is. That is what God is, in essence, is. It's all that is. And I was connecting with that essence. And I realized that because of the grandness of it and the openness of it. And even more so, just the way that it felt. And I don't think I can fully describe that to another person.
Right.
It's hard for me to put it into words. It's a feeling and a knowing that you're home. It's a feeling that this is the creative source that you came from. And I knew it. I knew it when I connected with it. It felt like home. It felt like, okay, this is where I came from. And I knew it. And so it is difficult to explain to someone else why I know that. And a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but I have come across people that would say, you know, this is an evil spirit deceiving you and trying to make you believe something that isn't true.
Right.
And it's a very fear-based idea, a very fear-based concept that, you know, to me doesn't resonate with me. It never has. That everything is out to get me and that I can't trust my feelings or my emotions. So, you know, for me, it is hard to answer to a question like that or a comment like that, because what I feel when I do this, what I feel when I communicate with source energy is complete, utter, unconditional love. And I don't think that can be replicated. I don't think that
it has to be experienced.
Right.
I think.
Exactly. It has
more
to be
so than
experienced.
verbalized, right?
Right. And when you know, when you feel it, you know it. And you know that it is your true nature. And then everything clicks and the walls come down and the fear comes down, and you don't have to work so hard to explain to yourself and to explain to others why you are who you are and you do this because, you know, there's not as much effort in everything, because there's a sense of security in who you are, and there's a sense of security in who you came to be, and there's more clarity on your soul purpose. And, you know, that's your biggest thing in life, I think, is to know what your soul purpose is and to follow that with all of your energy and passion.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that place, what happens is there's no resistance, there's no blockages in the pond, you know, or in the stream. Right. It flows.
You go beyond just reaching it to a point where logically you can accept this in the mind, can open up to it. This is beyond that. This goes deep into the soul and into a higher realm, I think. This is where I think this is what our purposes are here. Like everybody says, well, we're human beings, we're souls living in a human body, or I can't think of the phrase people use. But, yeah, I do believe that. And until we find that source in us, and everything, that joy, sadness, happiness, everything comes from us. What we put out, we get back. I don't want to call that karma because, well, maybe it is karma, but I don't think karma is putting a curse on somebody or, you know, you do wrong, you're going to get wrong. But if you yourself put out negative stuff and this is what you're living with, that's what you're going to get feedback to you.
Right. Yeah, that's the law of attraction.
Right.
Which, you know, and it can be hard for people to understand that, in the sense that, you know, and I get a lot of arguments like this too, of people that go, well, I didn't choose to get this disease. I didn't choose to get this illness. And how can you explain that? And, well, it is a lot of pressure to ask somebody that. Right. Because, you know, I think everyone has their own soul contract. Everyone has their own agreement. And sometimes part of your soul's journey is to learn how to move through those things and to learn to rise up to your own power and say, yeah, I do have a role in what's being created here. And it's not just happening to me. And it can be hard to get to that place.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you're not in that position, you know.
Right. Right.
And you can't be in their shoes and they look at you like, okay, you're not my shoes, you don't get it.
Right. Yeah, it's hard because a lot of people look at you and say, you don't understand, you haven't experienced in my shoes. You haven't walked in my shoes. But, you can't do the work for another person. And I've learned to just offer up some guidance when I feel I'm guided to, but I try to not get attached to anything. I try to not, do the work for another person and try to lift them up when essentially they don't want it. Oftentimes they want, they want some kind of validation, but you really do need to learn it on your own a lot of times. You need to get to a place within yourself where you're asking the questions and you're willing to listen.
True.
The listening is actually the bigger part.
That's what I was just going to say. It's actual hearing it, and that's when the change comes, because a lot of times we hear it, we listen, but we don't act on it either.
Right. Yeah, and I want to say about my book too, and about the information in the book. My own personal journey, getting to that point, was about being willing to not have my own agendas, being willing to not have to control, being willing to see the truth even if it was really difficult. And that's why it came through strong and pure, is because I let go of everything and just see what was there, just see it. And I had no idea what it was going to look like. I had no idea what kind of ugliness would come up.
Right.
And I did have to go through a lot of personal struggles, and I'm doing that right now. I still have a lot of things that are very difficult for me. But what remains the same is I'm constantly asking for how I can meet myself at a higher place, how I can move through things in the most graceful way, and how I can serve. And
go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to
go right ahead.
How I can serve myself really also impacts the whole. So I realized that, when we are constantly blinding ourselves and, we have all of these illusions of our mind going on and we're projecting our own stories onto other people, we're not evolving. And, the funniest part of this entire thing about being human is most of the time we're living in a dream. We feel like we are living in this dream that we think is reality. And we're creating all of this. And, it's time to own up to that and to wake ourselves up and kind of pinch yourself, from your sleep. And I feel like that's what I'm doing. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to do that. Is like, oh shoot, I've been asleep for, thousands of years. I better wake up.
Time to wake up and start living.
Time to wake up. And,
literally.
Right. And own up to what's there. And stop making up excuses. And it's hard because
it is.
Most of us have had, a very long lineage, a very long soul lineage, because we are eternal beings. But most of us have gone through a lot of struggle to get to where we are today. And I know I certainly have, to get to the point where I'm ready to share these things and that it's accepted. That's another thing. We've gotten to a point where I can speak about these things and it's accepted. But, there is a lot of personal evolution that needs to happen to get to that place.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a process. And I think There's a reason for that, too, because if you don't go through these ups and downs, you're not going to know what it is. Like you said, you felt like you were in just pure love, and there are no words to describe the feelings that came over you that way. Now, if we don't deal with all this other stuff and get rid of it, you're not going to be able to have that other things come in.
Exactly.
You know?
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that point before we move on to the next thing. I just wanted to add that a lot of people think, and a lot of people have this misconception about me, about my story, that when I hit that point, that it was like all, easy going from there, all downstream from there. And I just want to say that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I've had a lot of personal struggles and a lot of personal things that, we're a lot of things do feel like direct hits to you in life. And even though I have these awarenesses and I'm able to connect with spirit in the way that I do, I still feel very human a lot of the time. And I want people to understand that's not a bad thing.
Right.
It's actually the point of being human, is to learn how to use our emotions as a guidance system.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that.
We are humans, and nothing's going to change that.
Right.
I mean, that part of us is always going to be with us as long as they're in this form.
Exactly.
We can do all the work that you do, but you still, like you said, you still have to get up every day and go to work. You're living a humanity,
right,
as a human being.
Well, you have more tools. You have a bigger toolbox, and you have...
That's exactly what I was going to say. You have more options that you're aware of that could make your life a lot more better, or change yourself a little bit more one way or another.
Yeah. It's about awareness.
Exactly.
And when you have more awareness, then you're more in tune. And when you're more in tune, you can follow the signposts. And therefore, even when these struggles come up, you're able to look at them and not be as attached to them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to run away from them or be frightened of them. You can deal with them.
Or you might be frightened, but you're able to see your reaction and be okay with it.
Well, exactly. Right. Like I said, you might be frightened, but you don't have to be, because it's something that is part of your learning process.
Yeah.
And it's like accepting everything else of yourself to get where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's scary sometimes in and of itself. But if you can get beyond that fear and trust yourself and go like you've done, it's a lot of work, yes. It's a lot of trusting, yes. But it's very viable for everyone.
Absolutely.